Hello everybody, welcome back to Your Property Podcast. My name is Michelle Kearns, and with us today we've got Stuart Scott and Carly Houston. Hi guys.
Hello.
Hi, see you. Hi, Michelle.
It's great to have you both on. Longtime friends of YPN, and personally known Carly for a number of years back in the day when we were just starting out. And I saw both of you on the circuit, getting your portfolios up and running, and just being really inspiring in the property education world. So it's great to now be working with you guys and having you on board in the YPN magazine. And obviously we're doing the podcast today, and we'll be doing other things in the new year going forward. So it's exciting times. And the reason that we are working with you guys, one of the reasons amongst many, is that your niche that you're focused on is apart hotels. So we're going to be talking about apart hotels. For some people, people listening, they might not know what an apart hotel is. So shall we start there? What is apart hotels?
That's a good one. Do you want to do that, Carly?
Yeah, I do that one. I mean, if you think about apart hotels as a sort of hybrid between an apartment and a hotel, so hence the word apart hotel. So it's in terms of how it operates as a business, it's really about taking a lot of the sort of business model, if you like, of serviced apartments and hotels and doing a hybrid. But it's quite a broad definition. It can be interpreted in lots of different ways. It can be a real sliding scale. So you can think about it as a sort of relatively small block of apartments that you're running like SA, you're kind of running a bit like a hotel, but they're sort of separate apartments. You could call that an apart hotel, right up to huge complexes that have restaurants and reception areas, and even abroad, we might have like swimming pools and stuff like that. So there really is this sort of massive scale. And then our kind of interpretation and our model of it is sort of like taking, and we'll be going into this in a bit more detail, where we're sort of in this sort of smaller sectors, but it could be units from anywhere from sort of 10 to 25, 30 units, where we're really kind of making it quite a hybrid. So we're using the hotel kind of operating systems, but we're doing a kind of room only model, if you like. So some of the units might be similar sizes to some hotel rooms, but we're putting extra facilities in them to make them more self-contained. But we've got multiple units in a single building, and we're running it almost like sort of service accommodation, where you have guest self-check-in, we're using software, smart technology, we maybe don't have a reception on site, so we've not got other moving parts. We're sort of taking out a lot of the inefficiencies that hotels might have, trying to operate restaurants and all of that. So very, very much that hybrid, but really taking the best bits of both of those business models and bringing them together to create that sort of streamlined business model.
And also the other part that Carly mentioned there is the underlying principle that we are utilizing a use class that is not affected by upcoming legislation, because we're talking about these blocks of units in a building. And do you remember when you first got introduced to HMOs years ago, and it was single lets, okay? And people would just buy single lets one by one. And then you found out you could buy a house, and you could put multiple people renting in a house. Okay, so you have more density. You have multiple people in one house. Well, the great thing about apart hotels is a bit like the same analogy for HMOs, because whereas people were buying individual SA units, flats and apartments, now we've got buildings where we can have multiple in one building. Now, if you were in pure residential, you'd have to stick to space standards. We don't. And the reason we don't is because we are utilizing a new use, well, not a new use class, new to many people in the SA industry, which is C1. It's been around for years, guest houses, B&Bs, hotels. The C1 use class gives us a lot of mechanisms to be able to get more density in buildings. So Carly mentioned about the self-containment. We can have studio spaces that are as small as 10, 15 square meters, but yet we could have suites that are 20, 30 square meters. So huge opportunity for abilities to have lower overheads and be more competitive with a wider range of unit sizes.
And yeah, by having those multiple units in a single building, you really can take advantage of the scales of economy. So if you've got an SA business, and it's a great complement to having an existing SA business, or to maybe stepping that SA business up. But it's like you can get those scales of economy where if you've got sort of different SA units dotted around the city, actually having multiple units in a single building, you can get some scales of economy there as well. So it's just really looking at kind of taking those best bits from the different business models.
Yeah.
And the reason is that's where you can have smaller units and more density, because it's nobody's permanent residence. No one's living there.
Absolutely. These are not residential. Yeah, exactly. We're not talking. I mean, obviously, I say, you've got that ability that could switch back to resi, which that's fine. But this is very much you're working within a building that's never going to be residential. It has never been residential, because we're converting buildings that already exist as like sort of C1, so they're within a different use class anyway. So we're not looking to have to switch them back at any point. We're operating within that class already exists.
And actually, because we're optimizing that space in a way that you would do with HMOs, you optimize space. Because we're optimizing space within this use class, it means that for example, our cost of sale is lower. So we are more competitive than a 1-bed flat or a 2-bed flat that's competing against us in any given market, because of the volume of the space, we're able to be more effective with the space.
Yeah. So it's like taking a Venn diagram of service accommodation and hotels, and where it overlaps in the middle is apart hotels.
Exactly. And that's the opportunity. But the key to master that opportunity is to really understand how to safely and securely navigate the world of C1 use class.
Yeah. And it is very different than residential. So we're talking about different planning. But are you talking about a strategy whereby you target existing C1 properties, so existing B&Bs, guest houses or hotels, and then upgrading them, rather than, I suppose, converting a residential house or a different property into
absolutely.
a hotel?
Again, coming back to the key word here, opportunity, we do work with a number of people who are converting a commercial and converting across into them, and that is absolutely an opportunity at the moment. However, the biggest opportunity right now is one where you don't have to go through planning permission, because we all know how stressful planning permission is, and you're managing risk. The reality is that you've got guest houses, B&Bs and hotels that are already in the correct planning classification. Okay, and in anything you do within the gross internal area of the building, the GIA, the gross internal area, you don't need planning permission to utilize whatever you're going to do within there, and you don't need to stick to any space standards, because remember, you're not creating residential. It's not 37 square meters for a 1-bed flat, because you're not creating a 1-bed flat.
So you're reducing your risk and costs at each point. So if you already take an existing one, and also future-proofing it by, you don't need to worry about the future legislation in the same way as other strategies would. So
fully supported by the council. But I mean, when you saw this a lot when the market really slowed down at the back of COVID, because of course there were the grants and all the other stuff that came out. So it's hospitality, that the C1 use class and all the guest houses, B&Bs, hotels, they are supported by the tourism boards and also the councils.
True. In terms of the guest profile then, so people who are staying in these apart hotels, the appeal is it's self-contained more than just a hotel would be. So is it comparable in the rates that you can charge and to, let's say, a normal hotel, but people are getting more for their money? Or
so it's like we look to, when we're sort of like doing our revenue management, we call it, when you're kind of looking at your rates and how you set your prices and stuff like that, we're very much looking to both the hotel market and the sort of Airbnb short stay, because we're wanting to, again, it's that hybrid. So we look to both. So we very much look at hotel data, where if you're in the sort of more in the sort of traditional SA market, you're not necessarily looking at hotel data. So we are competing with hotels as well as competing with some service apartments, because some of our units sleep more people. You know, so some units sleep 2 people, some units will sleep 4, some will sleep 6. So so it's really, when you're looking at the market, you're really looking at, when someone comes to visit this location, what are their options for where they can stay? And so you are in competition for wherever they can stay. Now, what's interesting about our model is that in terms of that question on the guest profile, is that it is people that maybe don't necessarily want the traditional hotel model. They want the convenience of self-check-in. They don't want to stand in a queue at reception. And remember that queue at the old Hilton there, Michelle? I think we saw you
Oh yeah.
in that for a while. So, they don't want that experience. They want the convenience of the kind of Airbnb, but they still like the idea of it being a hotel, if that makes sense. And the landscape vastly changed since COVID. So we were already on this trajectory towards contactless check-in, like that convenience. So there was a lot of people going down that route, and obviously Airbnb service accommodation model played a huge part in that. But pre-COVID, you still had those people that they wanted the personal touch. They wanted to go to a traditional guest house and meet the owners and chat to them and all of that.
Or they want to full English.
Or they want to feel like
they
they want to sit
English.
down
And to be fair, sometimes when I travel, I want a full English. So
they want, and they want the breakfast and everything like that, because they're just attached to that traditional model. So there's a lot of people that were like that, but then because of COVID, even the people that were like that, they completely changed. And obviously it came about by people like safety and people not wanting to come in contact with people because they were obviously fearful of catching COVID. But then obviously people realized, well, this is actually a lot more convenient as well. And then actually from a business model point of view, you've also got the advantage of like, oh, actually, people are not so bothered about having a breakfast, and that's actually a sort of unprofitable part of the business. And we'll look in that, that space that we were having to put aside for giving people breakfast actually can be another unit of accommodation. And actually I can reduce my staffing costs because people can work remotely. So you've got that combination of it actually working really well together, because you've got the changing guest profile because people want different things and they value different things. And then you've actually got the fact that it's a much more lighter, streamlined model for actually your operations and keeping those costs down.
And also thinking about that tenant profile as well. If you imagine the kind of like the service accommodation industry at the moment, where most stock is sat on C3 residential, that means that it's been defined by C3 residential, the space standards, the sizes, everything. Because if it's been sat inside 1-bed flats, 2-bed flats, 3-bed flats, well, all of its sizing and spacing and everything and standards all been dictated by effectively C3 residential, which is kind of what the government is addressing at the moment. So really, what the apart hotel model allows us to do is have a bit more freedom in how we can maximize the spaces for the business model.
Yeah, that makes sense. And going back to the guest profile then, because hotels, you've got lots of tourists coming and staying. You do have contractors staying in hotels. However, I don't think many of them are very happy, because they, if they're staying for an extended period of time, a couple of weeks, really they don't want to be out, getting takeaways. They can't cook. They can't relax in the same way as they would in an Airbnb. So you've got that. And then with the Airbnb space or service accommodation space, it does tend to suit longer term contractors. So where does apart hotels fit in with those?
We are in that sweet spot between the two.
Well, and also it's you when you're doing your market research, and this is what we teach people to do, is like the market research element is really important. So you do your market research, you know what your market is, and then you can tailor your apart hotel to fit the market that you're targeting. So if you're in a more tourist area, what you put in the apart hotel might be different to if you were targeting the longer stay, the contractor market. So if you knew you were operating in a location and that was the who you wanted to target, then you might put more facilities in. You might make the units a bit bigger. You make sure that you actually create your product in line with the market that you want to attract. And that's the beauty of it. There's a lot of flexibility. If you know that it's tourist, you maybe won't put as many facilities in, or if you're really near to a load of cafes and restaurants. But absolutely, there's still an opportunity to go for the contractor market and get those scales of economy and really streamline it, but just making sure that you are actually catering to their needs. So that's all about the market research, which is the first thing we teach people to do, which underpins the whole thing, and that you can't miss that step out, as much as people don't like doing research.
So we've got the apart hotel model is more of a blank canvas for us to be able to adapt the buildings in a way that we adapt buildings for HMOs. We do it based on whether it's co-living, whether it's high quality, whether it's leasing, different ways we do it with HMOs. Well, with apart hotels, we're again taking that, we've got suites that sleep 6 and groups of friends and colleagues and contractors. We've got different configurations on beds, different levels of kitchenettes and facilities that go in there. All these things are completely definable by understanding the local market.
Yeah, it's called like sort of guest segmentation. You end up using a more kind of hotel jargon when you're kind of going into this, and it really is about just understanding your market and what the needs and wants are of each demographic.
Yeah, just starting with the demand and work backwards from there. And you mentioned about HMOs, so there's one of the number one rules of HMOs is don't mix the tenant profiles. You wouldn't have people who are necessarily on benefits with professionals or students all in the same house. Does that apply here, or is there more flexibility, or could you have a longer term contractor with people who are on holiday next door?
I think there's probably a bit more flexibility. I mean, I think that it's going to be a lot of it will be dictated by location and stuff as well. So I think there can be certain places where there could be crossover, and because you've got sort of self-contained units, they're not necessarily mixed with each other. But of course, if you had something which was in like a very high tourist kind of hotspot and it was a very central location, well, that that might be a bit of a party place or whatever, that might not work well for contractors that are looking to have a quieter time. But at the same time, having said that, there's going to be places where there's a great crossover, because it might be that it really suits contractors during the week, but it's suitable for a lot like guests at the weekend. So I wouldn't say that it's the same way. It's more also about how you set it up.
Dealing with different parts of the year as well. So, for example, I mean, it's most people can fill a 1-bed, 2-bed flat during the summer, but when winter hits, it's a different kettle of fish. Now, if you've got a broader range of unit types in the building, and in apart hotels, some of our units are smaller. We might have a studio space that's 10, 15 square meters with kitchenette and full facilities in there. Yeah. Well, that's highly competitive when you hit the winter season, in a way, because we're clearly not paying a cleaning cost that you're paying for a 1 to 2-bed flat. So our scales of economy within the buildings allow us to be far more competitive in different parts of the seasons, especially the shoulder seasons and the winter seasons as well. And like I say, that all feeds into the value of the business, and that value of the business will feed into the valuation and the numbers, the cash flow, and the amount of money you leave in the deal.
Do you guys have a personal preference on the guest profile, or is it a case of actually, if you've got a property in a location where there's a mix of holidaymakers and longer term contractors, that is better for a business model longer term?
Well, we've taken a blended approach definitely on ours, because we have got a mix of unit types. And we weren't sure originally when we first launched ours. We had some what we call micros. So we have some units in there, and some of them are micros. Now you would imagine that they'd be we're talking like 10 square meter little studio, little small Tokyo style micro units. And we weren't sure how they were going to perform, because thinking all the big ones with the sea views and all the other stuff will be the ones that would go first. But actually that's not been the case. The micros are very, very popular. They're at the back of the building, and they're little micro units.
Yeah, so it's sort of like, that's just sort of different group sizes, and thinking about that in terms of like having a preference on a guest profile, whether you're going for the contract market or the leisure market. I mean, you can take a couple of different approaches with that. You could, because ultimately you want to be creating a business that you believe in and building that business. And that's really, really important. So, you might come from a place of going, well, I really want to provide great accommodation to the leisure market. So then you would look to a location that's going to support that. Or you might come from the view of, this is a location that I want to invest in, therefore what's the market there, and adapt to that. So you can take slightly different approaches. I mean, ours, do cater more for the leisure market, and that's to do with the location, but that doesn't, we do get some contractor market, but we've geared it more to that because that's what the market that we're in demands. But absolutely, then other people there, we're working with people that are in other locations that are very much targeting the contractor or the corporate market, and then it's just all about like catering to that. But I think like and as Stuart said, he talked about the seasonality, so it's really around what you're looking to achieve is really the key is to try and get an all-round market. So whether that is, it's such a popular place that you've got an all-round leisure market, which obviously those places exist, or you've got an all-round contractor market, then that's, you're getting your full year's market from the same tenant type, guest type. Or if not, you're looking at how you adapt in the different seasons and how you make sure that you are catering to different groups.
Okay. Right. I mean, it sounds like the perfect hybrid, because a lot of people, when they come into this service accommodation world, they think, I have to decide between, do I dress the rooms and do I invest in this as if it's a leisure, holiday market, or is it contractors? Because they're two very different guest profiles. Whereas if you've got multiple units, you've got more flexibility, you can mix and match. So
I mean, the product side of things, just talk about the product itself. We were of the mind that when we launched the first one, then the second apart hotel, we did campaigns, outreach campaigns to contractors and leisure, and all of them. We did all of the marketing on all channels to appeal to all of them. But the product was a high impact product that we wanted to, very photogenic. We knew it was going to be getting into the magazines. We knew it would get PR and press, because that was part of, we wanted to get it into the stuff that was on the what do you call it, the Times and the Guardian and all the ones, because people will read them and then they want to stay in the location. So we wanted to do that as part of doing that. But regardless of whether we would go to contractor market or whether it would be leisure market, it had to be a high quality product. Not necessarily high end, but a high quality product. So I think the importance of creating a product in any competitive market, any competitor. I mean, you've seen this with the SA stuff that you've been doing, and also with the HMO market. There is always competition, so you've got to have a way to deal with competition, and you've got to maintain occupancy and demand. And the best way to do that is make sure you have a good quality product that you're offering to the market.
Yeah, I like the distinction between high end and high quality. So
high end, sometimes when I sometimes, if you use the word high end, there's an implication that it's super expensive or it costs you a lot, whereas high quality is in line with the deal, as opposed to just overspending.
Yeah, and there's a place for obviously high-end apartment hotels as well, and that's all again down to the market and the market research. And we've certainly got students that are targeting that high end and want to, because you've got different ways, and if there is a market for that, people will pay over what the sort of market average is if they are getting a high-end product. So again, if that was what your passion was and that's the business you wanted to build, you would need to find the location that's going to work, and make sure that you actually provide the service that's going to require as well.
You've got to stand out in any crowded market. You've got to stand out, and the big difference with service accommodation is you are measured so quickly. So if someone stays a weekend, they're not happy, it goes on TripAdvisor. So it's not like a HMO where you kind of get a feel whether people like things or don't like them after a while. You're getting quite a quick feedback loop from SA.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, so let's say we've got listeners thinking, this sounds perfect. How do I get into it? Would you say this is a strategy that is suitable for newbies, or is it for people who've got a chunk of cash and they're just looking to invest it in something that's going to be more higher profit than perhaps HMO?
Well, the first thing is to upskill yourself and educate yourself on understanding the strategy and the use class. Because if you're in service accommodation at the moment, or you're thinking of going into service accommodation, learning about apart hotels and learning about the opportunity so that you can take advantage of when the change happens with legislation, that's important to understand the marketplace. So one of the most important things, I think, if you're interested in service accommodation or diversifying within service accommodation into apart hotels, is to upskill your knowledge into those areas. Of course, we've got a set of webinars coming up with YPN, which are going to cover exactly this. We'll have webinars going specifically into the use class and the planning opportunities there.
And I think with any business model, any sort of property strategy that you want to get into, it's all going to be very dependent on your personal circumstances, So like this sort of term, okay, complete newbie or not, it really depends what your resources are, what time you've got, what other experiences you've got as to what's going to be right for you. If you're in a situation where you're completely new and you've got to you must start generating cash flow within a really short space of time, then it's probably not the place to start, because if you're wanting to do that, then you might go down the rent to rent route, or doing anything where, like any business model where you're buying and developing, and obviously there's lots of creative ways where you don't necessarily need to do that, and we utilize that a lot and teach people that a lot. But you've got to think about, well, what's your circumstances, what is your priorities, and then that's going to define. There's going to be lots of places that you are better for you to start than other places, but you could be new and have really great business experience, have the time, have resources where you don't need to generate that cash flow within the next 3 months, so it's absolutely dependent on everyone's individual circumstances as to which business model is right for them to start with. So there's not a kind of definite, if you're in this situation, this isn't right for you. Or
and also, when we built our apart hotels, we didn't use any of our own money.
Yeah.
So we didn't. It was not having the funds wasn't a restricting factor on it. We worked with private investors and we funded. We used creative finance solutions to approaches, and so both of our apart hotels have used none of our own money at all. So, again, that's a really great strategy for being able to utilize it. And, in the current market at the moment, you have to factor in interest rates. So, of course, that's where creative finance comes in, because there's lots of ways you can minimize some of those costs to make the deal stack.
True. Okay, so I haven't done any of your training. However, just from this conversation and what I know about kind of B&Bs and guest houses, as it stands today, it does seem like this is quite a unique window of opportunity with tired B&Bs and guest houses, etc., smaller hotels that are independently run, because there are a lot of people who are perhaps looking to retire. They haven't invested in their properties, and these properties are sitting there on the market. I drive past them all the time when I go into town. And
granny chic, I think they're called granny chic,
shabby chic,
shabby chic, granny chic.
Incredible. So do you think that this is a unique window of opportunity that actually, in, let's say, a couple of years will be saturated, or do you think that there's an opportunity for people who actually they don't really want the traditional hotel model, like the big corporate ones, and actually they'd prefer to move into this space? So actually it's
there's definitely a timing. There's definitely a timing thing here, because we know that legislation's coming from the government specifically to deal with the C3 residentials being used in that way. Now we don't know exactly what's rolling out, but we know legislation is coming into the market. So that means that at the moment you've got a situation where you've got, as you mentioned, guest houses, B&Bs, and hotels, every town and city across the UK that are available. Some of them are on the market. A lot of them are off the market, where they haven't even decided to sell yet, and they're not being targeted in the same way by investors, like you might get with other strategies. So there's definitely a window of opportunity, but this window of opportunity is mainly around the fact that most of the SA market has not been looking at this yet. So that window that might be for the next year or two is really an opportunity to probably negotiate some of and work with some of these sites, and utilize some of these existing C1 guest houses, B&Bs, hotels before it becomes more competitive to effectively negotiate them. At the moment, we are in a window of opportunity where you're not really up against very many people, which gives you more flexibility on negotiation.
Yeah,
Do you
and it's
think
and
that
then the market the way it is as well, properties aren't necessarily flying off the shelves right now. So that creates more of an opportunity for negotiation, for creative finance strategies like purchase lease options, vendor finance. So all of those are like absolutely the tools that you can use to acquire these properties a lower upfront cost, and get them up and running and stuff like that. So there's lots of ways in which you can kind of get into this. Obviously you've got the traditional purchase, and we teach that, and and we work with investors to raise that money. But there's also, you can also go apps like there's a real opportunity with purchase lease options as well within this.
So that's taking the world of rent to rent and going, actually, rather than rent to rent on one individual unit, then find another, suddenly you've got an entire portfolio of SA units with lower overheads, using effectively a rent to rent model, if you like, but you've got this option to execute and buy it at the optimum point.
So you're still looking for those circumstances where the owner has a problem that you're able to solve with your proposal, and that because a lot of the people that do have these traditional guest houses might be elderly, they might just want to stop, and they might be more likely to have another place that they move into, so they might be in a situation where they don't need the money right now, or they're only going to put that money in the bank, and and you're able to actually give them some income and help them out and help them be able to step away. So just I think we're coming in. I think there's like, we've always got obviously kind of creative finance solutions, things like purchase lease options. There's always opportunities with those, but then you always have a set of circumstances which creates more opportunities. And I think we're very much coming into that at the moment with the interest rates, with the market the way it is right now.
The more favourable opportunities because of the buyer's market. And then you said there about if changes in legislation, they are due to come in. So even if they are, let's say, palatable and we can work with them in the SA space, actually just the fact that they'll come in will put off a lot of people, and some people won't be, so that'll mean that there's more demand for the C1 class
definitely
set up and that won't be affected.
The people that are getting educated on AC, like doing your training or whatever, and they're already doing it, the people that are doing it properly are getting educated on it, they'll be the ones that'll be more adaptable, and there will still be people that are going to be able to operate in the AC market, and these the legislation that come in, like certain locations are going to be affected more than others. So obviously educating yourself is the number one thing to do, but of course there will be the people that have just kind of been winging it, that haven't educated themselves, they're not really doing it properly, and they're just going to go, do you know what, I'm off.
Well, and also
there's a lot of people in the SA market are going to leave, which then creates a massive opportunity for the people that stay in. So both the people that are staying and operate like your sort of traditional SA in the right way, and within apart hotels, because the demand is not going to disappear, the guests are not going to disappear, but the people that are properly are going to be there to get that extra business.
But the landscape might change, and yes, there may be some planning. It may be planning use class changes, but that may not be controversial everywhere. It might only be in certain parts of the UK. So it depends. It depends what that kind of that playing field looks like. But the biggest opportunity is probably the thing that probably worries people most. Because it will create that huge opportunity on the other side of it.
So we are very much looking forward to any legislation that comes in, because, and we know that where we are in Brighton is going to be one of the places that does that. So we're going to be quite keen for that to happen, because we're going to benefit along with the other SA operators that are doing it properly.
I think I've got a title for this podcast: Apart Hotels, the Perfect Storm.
Yeah, great.
There's so many things coming into play here. It's very interesting. I've not considered it through this strategy before. So yeah, it's really exciting.
Well, it's really an
And
evolution of what the interesting thing about this as a market is when we came into the market and we took the best of SA and we took the hotels and we have created these kind of like party hotels. One thing to bear in mind is the use class was always there. It's always been there. The Hiltons, the Metropoles, you name it. They've always been here. It's just that we've never had to really look to that use class. Why would we? Because if everything else is unregulated, why would we need to?
That's true.
Well, I mean, we were obviously always previously looking at guest houses thinking they would make brilliant HMOs,
Exactly,
so
yeah, doing the other way around.
Yeah, so a lot of people were going, oh, wouldn't it be fabulous?
Yeah.
But then they got, because I remember that, and I remember the first time I thought about, using a B&B as an HMO, this is brilliant. And it's like, it's not that, not that easy, and it's not. I have done it, but it's not that straightforward.
But some of the best benefits from a developer perspective and an investor perspective is really the density bit. What attracts people from single lets to HMOs is really density. I know we've got the product, we've got the community, got all the other stuff that we do on the other side, but there's a density part. That density is what makes the numbers work, the cash flow and the business model. Well, actually, with apart hotels, we're working with a very similar thing with density. We are utilizing it. But the big difference here is we're doing density without planning permission.
Yeah.
If we do density in HMOs and we do sui generis, we've got to go through planning.
Yeah.
But we're working with density and we're mitigating the risk of even needing it to go through planning. So that's an even bigger upside that, again, wouldn't on the face of it be something you would have thought of. But in fact, it's a huge upside to it.
Yeah, and obviously you're coming in with your own business model, your own values and vision for what the company can do. So you're going to a market that is tired and run down and hasn't been invested in, and you're not only just working with the intensity of the place, the density, sorry, the place, but you're actually looking at adding value through the experience and therefore increasing the income on that property, and then you're making the commercial valuation much more. So I guess there's an element of
there's a developer's margin on when you've finished as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if you buy the right kind of buildings, you add the right kind of number of units, and you do a lot of what we do with the business model and the performance, you are able to make a developer's margin on the day that you, as part of when you refinance and you go to terms. So there's an upside beyond cash flow here, which is into the developer margin on the building.
And it's sorry, go on.
Just to say that I think I interviewed you back in the day. It was Broad Street, wasn't it, when you'd just done that one? And did you? After your first one, did the penny drop then, or has it taken a while?
Well,
to think, wow, this is like no one else is doing this.
Well, we did. I mean, I got asked a lot actually about a few people that were told about the journey of what we've done with part hotels, and then because of the distance of what we did, some people said, "Oh, I thought you would have, bought some more apart hotels in that distance." And I was like, "Well, when we first met with you when we talked to you through on Broad Street and we talked to you about the first apart hotel, for us personally, we wanted to go end to end on the full distance to go all the way to refinance, because anyone will lend you money to go in, but you need the exit. So we needed to know we could go all the way through, create the operational data, create the value of the building, get to the term exit lending, exit, achieve the valuation we want so that we could recycle cash. We wanted to go end to end before we bought the second apart hotel, because we felt that was prudent and due diligence to fully test the model end to end. And that's why we didn't actually acquire the second apart hotel too many years later.
But that's important, because for people who are looking at, let's say, HMOs, they can come in, they do the refurbishment, and they are refinancing within, could be 6 months, maybe shorter, because they've got the higher rental income to prove the commercial valuation if they're looking at sui generis, for example. But in this case, with serviced accommodation,
you are
you've got to remember as well,
for longer.
We also did have COVID in the middle of it as well, so that obviously sort of slowed things down. So but we navigated that really well, and that was all because of the business model. And so what's really interesting is, like, because we had like we obviously had finance with the bank and stuff at that point. So the banks were like speaking to all the businesses and stuff like that. So I was having like quite a lot of conversations with our bank contacts, because you get quite a personal service when you're dealing with that kind of finance. And they were just like, every time that they spoke to us, they're like, oh, it's so nice to speak to you, because I keep having conversations with other people who, with other sort of like the traditional B&B owners, and they're just like all really suffering. And then they're like, oh, it's so nice to sort of have a relief to speak to someone that's actually not, that's navigating it really well. And at the end, they were having all sorts of really hard conversations with people that were losing their businesses. And then what was amazing was, because of this model, we were able to just adapt to the whole COVID situation, which again has just like proven the business model. So, so the where the bank hadn't really, when they financed us, they were very unsure about, they'd never seen it really, they hadn't really seen the business model. We were going, look, we're streamlining, and they're going, oh, but it's a bit different. It's not really what we know. But then after COVID, they were like, okay, this is a really good business model. And then, and we actually kind of ended up refinancing it afterwards. And then,
but unlike the traditional HMOs that you mentioned, you are basically getting the business up and running, you're running the performance, and you're dictating the value of the building based on the performance that you track. And the more performance, data, the more data you have, operational data you have, the more you have, the better your valuation. So we deliver
amount of data.
Well, we waited deliberately, and we took advice directly from the valuers who value these kind of buildings. And we could have done it with less data, but they said to us, if you just add a bit more and a little bit more, we're going to use less, where we have to be pessimistic, because if you estimate, it has to be pessimistic. So the more we could add, the stronger it was for our valuation. And so we actually pushed our valuation further and further out to get the maximum extra kind of seasons in there, so that we could drive that value up. But you could be from a smaller amount, whether that's 12 months to 18 months. But generally, we wanted at least a couple of years worth of books.
Yeah, and it's like, again, there's lots of different ways you can do it, and how you can structure the finance and do things in phases.
We're working with
like one refinance and another. So it's very much in the financial landscape's changing all the time. Lenders' criteria is changing all the time. So it's very much about working with the broker, but knowing the right questions to ask and how you're going to present it. So we very much teach people a kind of phased approach, depending on whether they're buying a going concern and they're going to operate for a while before they make changes, or whether they're going to go in and do the development. And so there's lots of different ways of doing it. But then also for us, as Stuart said, like the holding off was not a problem, because we had investors, like long-term investors. So this is another important aspect. People worry about, leaving money in or having to pay investors back. But what the way that we were viewing it is like, how much value are we adding to this building? And then it doesn't matter whether the debt, like if we've not refinanced with the bank, it doesn't really matter, because we've got bank finance and we've got investor finance. So it's still a blend. It's really about how much value have we added, and then what's our how far are we leveraged with our debt compared to the value. So having money left in, if you like, for longer wasn't an issue, because we had long-term investors that frankly didn't want their money back, and a business that's able to sustain that. So it's sometimes working with a blend of invested and bank finance is a kind of better prospect. And in fact, our second apart hotel, we've got zero bank finance on that. It's 100% investor debt that's on that, and that because we got a better deal working with investors and better terms, just having investors. So we had an offer from the bank, and we actually we're just going to stick with private investors. So there's, so it's if you sort of let go of that mindset of I've got to recycle money as fast as possible. It's all about the deal, how it stacks up, what your debt ratio is to the value you've added, like what opportunities there are, what phases you do it, and you can just shift your mindset around it.
And So that's kind of the model how we've done it. But then we're also working with other people at the moment who are buying going concerns, getting the buildings up and going, taking the quick wins, getting the cash flow coming in, and funding part of their refinance with the income coming in, and then doing a further kind of set of works to the building after year one. So again, there are many creative ways, and this is why I think if you sometimes just speak to a broker about this use class, it can sometimes see quite complicated way of doing it. But in fact, what you actually learn, the more you kind of go deeper into the use class and understanding how to operate this business model, there are lots of clever ways that you can stagger things that require less money up front, less money across the journey of it, and different ways you can finance it and build up the experience and the track record with the banks. There are ways that you can do that, but it's all in the strategy.
Amazing. Well, I think that's probably a good place to wrap up. I think we could be talking all day, but it seems like a good place there. So tell me about where can people find out more about what you're up to on the social media.
Yeah, if you just Google the co-living sorry, not the co-living revolution, the apart hotel revolution. So if you we've got our main website, the Apart Hotel Revolution, or if on social media, we'll be on the Apart Hotel Revolution as well. So we're on there, and we're going to have a set of webinars we're going to be doing exclusively with YPN. So keep an eye out for emails from YPN about those webinars, because we will be going into a lot of detail. We'll have a lot of slides, we'll have floor plans, a lot more information. So if you want to go deeper into this topic, I'd say keep an eye out for those YPN webinars that are coming up.
Great, and of course the articles in the magazine as well. So
Yep.
We're everywhere.
Fantastic.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, both of you. It's been really
talk to you as always.
Yeah, pleasure. Great. Okay, for everyone who's not yet a subscriber to the YPN magazine, click the link in the show notes for your free 30-day trial, and we will see you all soon. Take care for now, guys.
Thank you. Bye.